Hey Josh, welcome on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So today we're going to talk about, oh my gosh, we've got so many things actually I want to talk about today. So we can just dive in. And what I wanted to get you is get your story behind your the way that you got into fitness and training and sport. And I hear you have a bit of you have a big martial arts background and basketball as well. So maybe if we start right at the start, give me a bit of a brief overview of your story leading up to now.
Sure. Yeah. So again, thanks for having me. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me. I know it's the morning there for you, and it's approaching the evening for me. I got my foundation in all of the things that I do from martial arts. I sort of grew up in martial arts, and I say grew up in martial arts because my parents, they, as a family business, of kind of the side gig was running a martial arts studio in my small hometown. And so at the age of 4, I was 4, my brother was 5. That's when we started in this journey of kind of understanding and learning all there is to know, or at least all that we could consume at that age in the Eastern philosophies, which is very, very interesting. And then, you kind of fast forward, because when you start off in martial arts, you're learning a lot about the internal workings of the body, but from a very esoteric point of view. And, you're learning about chi energy, and you're learning about, meditation, and you're learning about different forms of discipline, in fact. And, it's like almost like you're, instead of sitting in timeout, you're having to sit cross-legged, or you have to sit in the splits, or you have to, rest on your knuckles, right? So these are just different ways of discipline. But ultimately, that led into my becoming a black belt at the age of 12. And in my dad's karate system, you had to also learn anatomy and first aid, and that was because he was an EMT and the chief of police in our hometown. Wow. So he wanted his sons to kind of go through some of the training that he went through and refine it into this beautiful system called American Karate System.
Wow.
And that's what enabled me to kind of understand and start to be very curious about how the body works. And, in order to become a black belt, I had to learn all the bones of the body. I had to learn all the muscles of the body, test on it. And then I also had to teach it back to anyone else that wanted to become a black belt, right?
My goodness.
And yeah, so it was really cool. I got a chance to kind of shadow my peers, and I also had to learn how to be a good teacher. So I was a great follower, and I also became a great teacher. And then that morphed into my discovering my love for basketball. So after I got my black belt at age 12, my dad said that my brother and I could explore any kind of sport we wanted to do as long as we continued to teach, as a part of the family business. And so I would continue to teach, but I started to just become obsessed with basketball. And I think it was more because it was an outlet to kind of getting out from underneath something that you had to do. Because, growing up in martial arts, I kind of had to, right?
Yeah. That inner rebel.
Yeah, right. So it was my outlet, but it became such a big part of who I am today. And then that's what's ultimately led me to going to college without any debt. And that got me to discovering sort of my next phase of life, which was moving to New York and then eventually playing overseas. And then that's ultimately what led me to kind of doing the training stuff that I do now. So,
my goodness, what an incredible foundation for a youth, and before 12, having all of that, that discipline and the knowledge of the body, and then just being aware of yourself in so many deeper levels. That's amazing.
indeed.
Wow. So, from that point, obviously now you've had an incredible, expanse of different things that you've done. And I hear health coaching. You've had, obviously, I think you've been a model. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's why I first moved to New York, because I wanted to. When I was graduating from college, I I realized I had broken my wrist my junior year, or maybe, yeah, it was my junior year. I broke my wrist, and it was my right hand, which is my shooting hand and dribbling hand, whatever. And I literally saw my career flash in front of my eyes, right? And I was like, okay, well, even if I do rehab, which is again what led me to understanding more about the body and how to rehab and talking to physical therapists and different trainers, back then, I was realizing that, wow, maybe this is another calling for me, another outlet. Things happen for a reason, right? And so when I was kind of thinking before the injury, I was thinking for sure I was going to go to the NBA. I just knew I was going to go to the NBA. Then I break my wrist and I had a few road bumps along the way. I'm like, all right, Josh, let's get a little bit more realistic. Let's have something else planned out for your life. And so that's when I kind of discovered that I enjoyed photography, and I took some photography courses as elective courses in college just to finish up my graduation. And every time I would take photos and also have photos taken of me from the different students in class, I realized, this is kind of cool. I just thought maybe one day I could be in a magazine, and that would be something I could say to my future kids, like, hey, here's a picture of your dad in the magazine. And I kind of thought like that would be enough. I never really aspired to be a model, I guess. And then when I started to get some interest from some of the different modeling agencies and some magazines, I was like, maybe there is something. Yeah, okay. So that's what got me to move to New York for a period of time. But the training world and the fitness world is what kept me in New York.
Yeah, it's huge. And your love of biohacking. So I had a chat with Ingrid last week, I think it was, or the week before. And I see you a few times, and you guys just obviously are enthralled with all the biohacking scene, and obviously the health hacking, and as am I. But first, before we get to that, because there's obviously a big part around that I want to talk to you about, but how did you become, or how did you even start the gym that you've got in New York, as the System Fit? And I know there's some philosophies around that and some pillars that you so we'll talk around that as well. But how did you get to that point and actually realize, oh my gosh, I want to be doing this full time, and then even to the elite and to the stars that you're training?
Well, that's a very good question, and yes, you're right. Ingrid is someone that when I met her and talked with her about like all the things she does, I was like, wow, finally someone that I can really relate to. And she's taught me so many things, and I've taught her so many things in a very short period of time. And it was thanks to Shaker and Scott and Ted for sort of helping to make those meetings and those interactions. But biohacking to me sort of started from, or I guess the reason why I wanted to have a studio is because when I got thrust into this celebrity training world, I sort of came in with this different mode of thinking, right? Because I had that Eastern philosophy, and I learned from my parents growing up that like you can do multiple things and be good at multiple things, and experience is ultimately what dictates how good you are at something, I feel, right? And so it's almost like getting a driver's license. You can get your driver's license, take your test, you can get the license, you're good to go, but you don't really start learning until you get on the road. And it's the same thing with like getting a fitness certification. It's like I didn't start really learning fitness, health, and wellness until I started to listen, and I started to become more aware, and I started to work with different types of clients. And so getting to that celebrity level, luckily, I got thrust into it, and I was able to handle that very easily because I'm a people person, and I learned from a young age how to teach and how to listen, right? And so
it's huge, isn't it?
It's big. So when I started to realize that like this celebrity training world is wonderful, it's great, and I was sort of forced to have to learn one style of training in order to train my first celebrity client. And I realized that everyone else around that person wanted to just like, hey, I want to look like her, so I want to train like her. And in the background of my mind, I'm thinking, well, you don't even know how she trains. So how is it like, I think you're aspiring to go for that look. And, you know, if you want to go for that look, great, but you probably need to have the parents that she has. You probably need to have the lifestyle that she has. You probably need to have the resources that she has in order to do that. And so that's what started to encourage me, the curious one in me, to say, okay, how can I get people to understand what I'm understanding without infringing upon their privacy, right? How can I work with someone? And I said, okay, maybe I need to open up my own facility and start to talk more about this. And you know, I'm sure we'll talk about this here in a bit, but this is how I ultimately came up with the 5 pillars of optimum health and wellness. And it started out with 4, and then it, you know, developed into 5, and we could talk about that. But my studio in New York, which is obviously shut down right now because of COVID, but it was a manifestation of a lot of experience working with many clients, making many mistakes, but learning from those mistakes. And those mistakes were made because I was willing to take risks. And, you know, a lot of people will say, Josh is so lucky because he gets to work with this client and he gets to travel there, but they have no idea the amount of work that goes on. Yeah. And, you know, and you have to put that energy in the universe, and you have to actually work for it if that's what you want, you know. And you might get into this field and realize this ain't what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. But your grounding, I think, from the early age, like you say, you were able to come back into that and come back into yourself and have that observance that gave you the outward look at what's going on around you, then to actually make those internal decisions a lot easier because you were given that really good, you know, foundation. I think that's super important, isn't it? To be taught that from a young age, because a lot of people don't even realize until they're 40 plus that these sorts of things exist.
Right.
Yeah.
And try changing the foundation, you know, of a person.
Unlearning.
In
My
life,
gosh.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know if you have this expression where you are, but they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have that
right?
here. Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, the curious one in me likes to take that as a challenge, and I'm like, okay, I'll teach that dog because I love dogs, right? And I'll teach that dog new tricks, but it doesn't mean that it's easy, right?
No.
And maybe it's easier to work with, you know, a client that has a completely blank slate.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can create that blank slate just by creating a conversation. This is why I love health coaching, because health coaching, simply put, is a lot of asking questions and then shutting up, listening.
Absolutely.
You know? So yeah.
Same with, you know, in my clinic, it's I love a challenge of creating these new habits for people and trying to unlearn or reteach them. But it takes a lot of patience and listening, because you have to really dig deep, and that's the key. And I think that's what I love about all what you do in terms of your clients. It's a very different approach to what I've seen done before. So it's very intriguing, very, very cool.
Thank you for noticing. I love to use the phrase patience with patience.
Oh, absolutely.
So many play on words there.
And I have 2 kids, and I tell you, patience is definitely needed.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's dive into these pillars, if you don't mind. Let's talk about these.
Okay, good. Yeah. So this is ultimately a bit of my method. It's almost like opening up the kimono. Speaking of Eastern philosophies, right? Opening up the kimono, and you'll find with me, I use a lot of analogies, and I love to try to break things down in ways that we can all sort of digest, pun intended. Yeah. So with the pillars, I've always been, especially once I became known as a quote unquote celebrity trainer, I realized early on that I would be getting asked questions from different magazine writers and different articles of like, hey, you know, Josh, well, okay, what are the top 3 tips for blah? And what are the top 12 tips for blah? And I started to realize that, wow, okay, I guess this is what the people want, right? This is why people are picking up magazines, and why there's a lot of viewership in different shows and things of that nature, is people want it simplified. So I started to kind of write down notes, and I created a podcast actually to sort of have an easy resource to give to people, because I kept hearing the same questions. But I'm the kind of person that doesn't want to give the same answer, because I realize that we are all unique. Absolutely. We all have that kind of fingerprint of how we receive information and how we perceive a situation. So I said, okay, let me create a podcast, because then that'll be easier to kind of say, hey, that's a very good question. Go listen to podcast episode number 22, because I addressed all of that. And then if you have any questions from there, then we can discuss.
Yeah.
And I started to realize that made my situation easier to kind of expand, to go beyond my 1 or 2 clients that I worked with. And so that was a very beautiful thing. But then I was like, okay, if at some point I come out with a book, what would that book look like? You know, like what would it look like to have like a few things, you know, based on chapters, like what are like 4 chapters, and then, you know, a summary, a middle, and an end. You know, I was kind of thinking of this, right? And so that's when I came up with my pillars for health and wellness. And it started out with 4. And I'll rattle those off, but I used a you can hear the sirens in the background.
Yeah.
Okay. This is LA. I feel like it's actually more prevalent in New York City, but you know, here we are nonetheless. So I use a descriptor term, which is quality. And that sort of designates each of the different pillars, because the goal would be to optimize and to qualify each of the different pillars, right? So the original 4 pillars that I used for several years started off with quality, sleep, and recovery. Because at the time, I felt like it was the thing that wasn't sexy to talk about, right? It's like everyone kind of already knew, quote unquote, knew that they needed to be sleeping well and recovering well, but they're kind of like, hey, let's get to the meat and potatoes of it. Like, you're a fitness trainer, Josh, that's all you are. So what exercises can I do to get whatever, right? To be fit or whatever. And then I'm like, this is, you know, I want to go against that, because it's kind of like teaching an old dog new tricks. I'm going to teach you a new trick, right? So, you know, I put that number 1, and I thought to myself, okay, this is going to cause people to ask questions, because anytime a person asks a question, I treat it as an opportunity to educate. So absolutely. Quality sleep and recovery, that became number 1 and the most focused thing. And I'm certain that I lost a handful of clients, because that's all I talked about for a long time, was just quality sleep and recovery. You know, it's like, if you want to work with Josh, you're going to be talking about sleep. You're going to be talking about all kinds of bed angles and pillows and all sorts of things, right? So
mouth taping.
yeah. Well, that's actually a very recent thing for me, which I love, and we can talk about that for sure. So it started off with quality sleep and recovery, and then I also was really into the biotech, right? So the wearable tech. At that time when I created these pillars. And so I also wanted people to have a way to track it. So it's like, yeah, we could trick ourselves or lie to ourselves and not, you know, be cognizant of the actual need for sleep and recovery, and just say, check off the box. Yeah, I slept 8 hours. Well, that's not good enough, because I want to see, are you progressing? Are you getting better? Are you getting worse? Are you staying the same? Okay. So quality sleep and recovery was number 1. Number 2, so the next kind of most important thing would have been quality consumption. And I always like to choose the word consumption, because it signified more than just eating. It also signified drinking. So liquids, foods, but also the energy that we consume around us, right? Which I think is also very important, because look, I don't care how well you eat, how well you drink, but if you're in a toxic environment, then it could be just as bad, or definitely is just as bad, if not worse, than what you drink or eat. So quality consumption kind of became another one that was like, well, what do you mean by that? Again, I'm trying to create a conversation, a flow, and I want people to ask me a question so that I can then listen to their question and then give a good response, right? So quality sleep and recovery, 1, quality consumption, 2, quality activeness was 3. And, you know, it's like we could say movement and activeness, or, you know, it would obviously get people to go, well, what is activeness? They automatically think fitness. They think CrossFit. They think go run. They think, you know, whatever. And of course that is being active, but I lump that into a separate category. So for me, quality activeness means doing all the things that are required. In fact, taking away the things to make movement easier for us, if that makes sense. So nowadays we've got people using electric toothbrushes. Perfectly fine, all good, but just understand what that is doing. That's taking away some kind of movement snack throughout your day. And it takes away that opportunity for you to maybe use your other hand to see just how different it is, right? Because sometimes we're not forced to do that unless we break our wrist, right? Which is something that I learned back when, you know, here I am, this hopeful professional basketball player who broke his shooting hand. I'm a shooter. So what did that force me to do? To become a good shooter with my left hand. So now when I play basketball, I can shoot with my left or my right. But that came about purely because of the need, right? It's almost like natural selection or survival of the fittest. Sometimes you don't do things until you're forced to do so. Absolutely. And so my hope was like, okay, maybe I could, you know, you working with me as a client would be that forcing of the situation. Maybe I could show you that you need to be doing that. So let's throw away the electric toothbrush, and I want you to get a left-handed toothbrush if you're right-handed, you know, and see how clean you can get your teeth, and do that 3 times a day and see how much better you get, right? And you know, so it's little things like that, or walking to the store, no matter how far away you live. Think of it like hunting and gathering. And people in New York think we're prone to walking all the time anyway in New York. But when I would say, hey, you live on 110th Street and the grocery store you want to go to is on 96th Street, walk to it. And then what about on the way back? You know, I got to carry all these groceries. Well, what do you think our ancestors did? Right. And then this is almost like truly hunting, gathering, and then cooking your win, right? Like the win for the day. And I just kind of think this is like a fun way to get people to engage with that quality activeness component, because you can almost gamify it and allow it to be a challenge and allow it to be truly helpful from a play perspective, but also from a just from a true health perspective. So that was number 3. And then the 4th one would be quality exercise. And I would lump that one into that last category just to get people to ask the question, well, why do you put that last? I put it last because if you're doing steps 1, 2, and 3 very well, then step 4, the quality exercise, should purely be fun, and do it when you feel the need to do it or you have the time to do it. If you're doing all those other 3 steps very well, then you can exercise once a week if you want, right? And I would never say, because people go, once a week? Like that's what I used to do back then. I used to exercise once a week, and I would say, yeah, you know, I would go for a sprint and I would do a high intensity interval training once a week. And I was able to maintain a good physique and a good level of fitness working out once a week. And then they would come back and say to me, oh, but I saw you going for a walk the other day and I saw you carrying bags. And I'm like, yeah, I was being active, but I don't treat that as exercise. I treat exercise as a moment to kind of, to be in a certain time with a certain reps and circuits. But activeness, we can do far longer than we can ever do exercise. Absolutely. So those were the 4 pillars. And it wasn't until I would say about a year or 2 ago that I was like, there was always something missing. I always felt like 4 just wasn't quite enough. And I'm thinking, okay, what would be more profound than sleep and recovery? What would be more profound than consumption? What would be more profound than activeness and exercise? And I thought, awareness. Quality awareness became the 5th pillar, but it went all the way up to the top. So it now is number 1, because number 1, quality awareness is something that helps each of those steps. It really helps each of those steps. In fact, to be aware would allow you to understand that you need to sleep better. You need to do something about your recovery. to be aware will tell you that you need to actually fast today because you're not really that hungry. You're just, it's out of habit, right? To be aware that your back is tight because you sit too long. It's all of these things that awareness kind of becomes the number one. So that's the pillars.
That's incredible. Yeah, Josh, like everything you're saying, I'm like, oh, yes. In my clinic, like I created this podcast, and I said to this off air as well, for the reason to get my clients and my students a little bit more information out there, and to, with the same reason, is to like, oh, you've got a question on this, I don't really have enough time this half an hour to an hour, like go out and listen to this one because that's going to give you more info. I created a course because of that as well, a base health course, and my number one is that awareness. So why, what, when, why are you doing it? How are you going to do it? And setting those goals and the awareness of the body. It's huge for people because a lot of people like you and me, we have been doing this for a long time. We know what our body feels like, and we clock in very, very regularly, whereas a lot of people don't. So I love that. I love all of your pillars. They're amazing.
Thank you.
And
by the way,
crazy.
I'm happy that you're saying that because it just validates what it is that, you're halfway across the world, yet we both have come to this realization, and it's not just you and me, right? There's many people out there with this realization, and it's just trying to find a way back to the self, right? Because at the end of the day, we are one, and we're on this planet,
absolutely.
We're in this universe together. It's a unified field. And so no matter how deep you want to go in that conversation, it's at the end of the day, this is what some of the talk about psychedelics, the reason why it keeps coming back into the conversation, because it's sort of unveiling the other side, right?
Absolutely.
It's unveiling something deeper. And so to become aware, I also lump meditation into that pillar, because that's the one thing that enabled me to understand that I need to be aware of that, right? And so
absolutely, awareness can be all of that.
Yeah.
And with your activeness, I really love the fact that you're an elite, you're an elite fitness trainer, yet you're exercise. And I was going to talk to you about this in a minute, about the myths of fitness, and movement. But the activeness, micro movements and incidental exercise are my terms that I use with my clients. Because a lot of my clients will say, I just can't get movement in. Or a lot of my female clients will be getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning and wondering why they've plateaued and running themselves into the ground and then having to, not sleep at night. I'm like, no, you got to stop exercising. You've just got to do incidental movements. This increases your hydration. These micro movements are your cells moving. Like, you've just got to move, but just easy movements. So oh my gosh, like everything you were saying, I was like, yes, this is fantastic. I love it.
Well, I think that's very important that you say that, because imagine a fitness trainer telling someone to not work out.
Absolutely. I know. Yeah.
And that is, fortunately, I am truly blessed in my career and to be able to turn down clients. But I've literally said to clients many time and time again, hey, I may not be the right trainer for you because you keep coming in. I can see that you're stressed. This is my job to be able to observe someone. And I'm observing that you are on the brink of adrenaline fatigue. How do you know this? And what do you mean? Again, a question is an opportunity to educate, right? So,
absolutely.
Hey,
they're going to learn more.
Why don't you get one of these Oura rings, or let's track your HRV. What is HRV? Another opportunity to educate. And they're like, oh, wow. Now I have this sort of, without physically being there, they know now that this week or each day they're going to have to send me their results of their sleep. And I used to say, hey, send me your results, your sleep results, or your HRV results when you come in, and that'll determine what we do today. And now you get clients because they want to work out, right? Because they're spending their money. So they want to come to the gym and work out. And I'll be like, hey, I'm here to work out if you want. Or how about we go and do a new calm session because you didn't sleep like at all last night. You got 3 hours of sleep probably because you had 3 glasses of wine and that disrupted your REM or your deep sleep, right? And so we're going to allow you to catch up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're like, well, what is that? And so this is the reason why I created the pillars, is because there's so many intertwining ways to get to ultimately happiness, optimize wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. So with obviously I wanted to talk about all the things that you're using in your gym, or when your gym is open. So, BFR, the cryo, the HIIT, even, grounding that your big belief is in, and some of those other equipments that you're using in your gym, but also the myths. So the major myths around fitness. And I know we've already covered, working out too often would probably be one of mine. But in your perspective, what are those that you see that come up?
How much time do we have?
I know, it's a big one, isn't it?
There's so many, and it's funny, but it's not funny, because it doesn't really have to be like that. And so I'll reiterate what I mentioned before, and then I'll rattle off a few other myths that I hear a lot. But if you're doing all of these pillars well, then when you get to the need or the desire to exercise, then that should be the easiest part. It should not be forced. So for instance, I hear that, well, as a trainer, how often do people normally exercise?
Yeah. Wow.
1
Every
hour.
day? Well, 1 hour.
No.
Yeah. 1 hour.
Right.
And
like 1 hour is like the standard, right?
Yeah. Even up to
Why?
2 hours. Like 2
Right.
hours I hear all the time.
It's to me, it's so interesting that we choose, someone somewhere somehow said, hey, 1 hour is the standard for the business of fitness. Right. And I think maybe it's because lunch breaks are 1 hour typically, right? Or in 15-minute increments. But again, going back to me always wanting to see things as a challenge, I used to throw people off for like, all right, we're going to do this next exercise for 53 seconds. Can you imagine what that does to the mind of a client?
Like, what? Not a minute? Like, why?
But like, well, or I used to love the client. And this is how I have fun with my sessions, right? Otherwise it becomes very mundane and monotonous. But if I know that I have a type A personality in front of me who is like, okay, so what are we doing today? Well, we're going to move. Okay. You ready? They're like, no. But like, what are we going to start with?
Give me the outline now. How many minutes?
and then some clients will be like, okay, well, how many reps are we doing? We're going to do 17 reps. What? 17 reps? Why not 15? Why not 20? So anyway, I could go down a rabbit hole with that.
It's all the unlearning,
Unlearning, absolutely.
Yeah.
So one myth is that exercise has to be a certain amount of time for it to garnish a good benefit. That's totally false. And you mentioned BFR. We can get into this as well, but BFR is one of those things that kind of throws that out the water, right? Just kind of debunks that myth, because like for instance, with a Katsu device, I'm not familiar. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's, the BFR bands that inflate and deflate. You're not supposed to do more than 15 minutes of training mode on the arms and no more than 20 minutes of training mode on the legs. So if you are to do arms and then legs in the same one session, you're talking about 35 minutes. So, okay, that's if you're going to the top end. A lot of people can't even do that. But I want people to understand that there is no certain amount of time, and more is not always better. So it's, when it comes back to the pillars again, you want to have quality exercise. And what does that mean? Sometimes quality exercise is literally just going for a walk. Going for a walk, maybe uphill, learning how to breathe through your nose the entire time.
Yeah.
That's one myth. Another myth is that lifting weights will make you bulky. I hear this all the time. And it's so unfortunate. Yeah. It's so unfortunate. In fact, just before we got on this call, I was speaking to one of my colleagues, and I love to work with my trainers, especially right now during the quarantine, because, or the pandemic, self-isolation, whatever you want to call it. because I want to always give them hope. And, you know, I know they see me as sort of the boss and as the celebrity trainer, but I'm the one that's always encouraging them. I was helping my buddy Germany through his new logo, and we were talking about his training styles and doing all these things, right? But it basically, I was also saying to him, because he's a male and he's very ripped and he's very fit, potentially he has to be very careful in how he promotes himself, because you don't want to miss out. If your goal is to help as many people as you can, you don't want to miss out on 50% of the people who don't want to look like you and don't want to train like you and think that that's all you do. You know? And so I'm sure once he hears this podcast, he's going to be like smiling ear to ear, because this is something that I'm sure that he's heard me say to him so many times over the years that I've known him. But I just want people right now to understand that that is a myth. You have to work really hard to get bulky. And, you know, one set of bicep curls or one set of pull-ups is not going to make your arms big, period.
No way.
Period.
I totally agree with you. And with women too, because that's a real myth around particularly women, because the women are like, no, I don't want to get bulky. Oh no, I'm not lifting weights. Oh, I lift weights. I'm definitely not bulky, you know, so it's something that not everyone will get. And yeah, I agree. You have to work hard for it, for sure.
And counter to you like lifting weights and not being bulky, I don't lift weights and I am bulky.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
But it's how I do it and what I do, right? And so I go through phases. Like when I was modeling, it was all about being as thin as you could be. And that was it caused me to learn more about nutrition. It caused me to learn, you know, fortunately throughout my college years and even a little bit after college, I was working part-time at GNC in Oklahoma, where I'm from. And that's General Nutrition Center. I don't know if you have that in Australia, but
I don't think so.
It was a big sort of, it was like the Walmart or the Target of fitness or health supplements. You know, it was like the place you would go for the creatine or for the protein or whatever. And so I worked as a salesperson at that store for about 6 years part-time. And, you know, I would always hear people, you know, talking about, oh, this magazine says I need to have this in order to get like that. And I'm like, no, that person, first of all, like they have worked day in and day out. They have spent their entire life dedicated to lifting weights. That's why they're that big. I promise you, they do more than just a set of curls. So, yeah. Anyway, I mean, there's so many myths. I'm sure we could go on and on, and you could feel free to throw some out if you want, but there's so many.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common ones though. And what I think everyone needs to hear those sorts of things, because we're so still like one track minded when it comes to fitness, and we need to open that up a little bit, as with health and wellness. And I think the whole of the world at the moment, it just needs to be looked at from a different perspective, because there's so much more to it than what we see.
I have another one that I would love to throw in if you don't mind. That just came to my mind. And this is it's almost like a pet peeve of mine. When a person comes to me and says, okay, what are we doing? And I say, like, their programming could be, okay, you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then, you know, maybe go for a run. Oh no, I can't run. Running hurts my knees. Okay. For me, I treat that as a myth, because improper running hurts your knees, right? Just like, you know, to hear someone say fat makes you fat. Well, no, bad fat makes you fat. In fact, even healthy fats with too much sugar makes you fat, right? So let's get to the root cause of it. And so if running hurts your knees, let's figure out then why something you were born to do, right, a capability within you, why that might be hurting your knees. Let's take off your shoes. Let's see how you balance on one foot. Let's see how you now load that one foot, because running is a series of 1 foot hops, right? So can you hop in place on 2 feet? Sure. And most people can do it, and most people will never strike their heels first when they bounce in place on 2 feet. No one on the planet has ever done that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I say to a person, okay, just hop on your feet up and down really quickly. So they hop, 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 hop. Okay. I want to see what your feet are doing. So take off your shoes and socks. Right? So then they take off their shoes and socks and they're hopping up and down. And you see the most beautiful arches. You see the most beautiful spring loading. You see the most beautiful bend in the legs and the hips and everything working the way it's supposed to work. And then I have them do it in a proper rhythm. And then I assess their posture and everything looks great. Then I say, okay, now I want you to keep that rhythm, keep that posture. And now I want you to go single foot. And so they go single foot. And that's when things start to get highlighted. Now you've got to learn how to shift at the ankle. You now have to load 2 times your body weight, sometimes 3 times your body weight on 1 foot. So now the structures of the feet, the ankle, the knees, the hips are all highlighted. Okay. Now, if you can continue doing that, great. Let's do the other side. Let's make sure you're symmetrical. If you can do that, great. Now let's keep that rhythm. Let's go 1 foot, other foot, 1 foot, other foot, alternate. Now you're running in place. Now all you do is just propel at the hips, slightly lean forward at the hips, and now you're running. But for some reason, when you tell somebody to just go run instead of having them hop first, they do something that looks totally different than hopping in place, right? So
it's bad habits.
Right. So if hopping in place on 1 foot hurts your knees or your ankles, now you've got something else because you're not actually running. Running didn't hurt your knees. It's improper movement hurt your knees. So now let's fix that. So anyway, I hope that helps to kind of.
That's incredible. I love it.
Yeah. Maybe some people will listen at this and go, wait, so this is what it's like to work with this guy.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know what, 10 years ago, I read Born to Run and it changed my mind. Completely changed my perspective on running. I loved running before that. And then I went out and bought myself some of not Vivo Barefoot, the 5 fingers. Have you heard of the 5 fingers?
Vibrams. The Vibrams, yeah.
The Vibrams. So I went out and bought a couple of Vibrams and my calves didn't like me for it for a couple of months. But oh my gosh, it changed my running style completely.
That happened to so many people. In fact, you probably heard this. There was a lawsuit from a lady that I think there was maybe 2 lawsuits, but they ultimately ended up losing. Vibrams was the only one, but Vivo Barefoot and a few of the other companies also caught the heat from it, because when you hear that there was a lawsuit because someone actually did get injured doing it, then it was like, wait a minute, is there something wrong with the other shoe companies? And ultimately what it was just improper education around the idea of it, right? And so people were reading the book, and because I trained with Lee Saxby, who's one of the people who trained Christopher McDougall, who wrote Born to Run, right? And I went through that same training. And during that time, I remember that there was this big push for making sure that everyone understood that you have to ease into barefoot running. Because the Tarahumara, the people in Mexico and in that region, they were born doing that style of running.
Literally born, to run.
Right? and so they didn't sit in desks. They didn't wear these thick shotted shoes. So their structures were ready and prepared for it. And then we Westerners and modernized people, we took that book, we read it, and we go, ooh, I want to get some of the Tarahumara shoes and the sandals and take the worn down tires and strap them to my feet and then go run without the proper training, right? And listen, I did the same thing.
Oh, me too. I had blisters all over my feet and I was like, stupid.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I'm lucky that I didn't tear my Achilles, because I went out sprinting like I was a madman.
This is it. This is the way to do it. Woo!
Yeah. So
love that. Oh, all right. So after all those myths, let's talk about a little bit more about what you're doing and your favorite kind of fitness and biohacking techniques, therapies, all that sort of stuff. So we've got, there's probably a lot, but maybe ones that you've really become a favorite and a part of your routine and your clients' routines.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about the most utilized ones now.
Yeah.
Because right now I am sort of on the move despite this lockdown situation. I'm on the move quite a bit. So I have to kind of decide what's the most important staples for me.
Yeah.
And I can maybe give you a few examples in each of the pillars and kind of quickly rattle through those to give you an idea of what are the staples, right? So, for the awareness piece, the quality awareness, like I definitely have tools to track my health, things like the Oura Ring, my Garmin Phoenix, the 5X Plus. These are tools that allow me to track my HRV and things like that, which would also fall into the quality sleep and recovery. But as far as the awareness and the meditation piece goes, I use the Muse, Muse, or just the Muse headband. I also use New Calm, and that can be used for meditation and or sleep and recovery. Let me think, what else? And breath work. I lump breath work, the awareness of breath. It can also, like, obviously the quality awareness and quality sleep and recovery intertwine a lot. So then moving on to sleep and recovery, I really love right now using sleep tape.
Yeah, cool.
It's so interesting that I've probably known this for all my life, but this idea of having dry mouth, like I know many of the people listening to this right now probably wake up every morning with dry mouth, and maybe they snore, maybe they don't snore, but chances are they're mouth breathing at some point throughout the night. And the simple idea of just putting a piece of tape either vertically or horizontally or in an X shape across your mouth, just enough to encourage you to breathe through your nose, can be transformative for your sleep, for your recovery, for your entire life.
Huge.
It's powerful.
I mention it to my clients and they literally go, excuse me, what did you say? And I was like, yeah, can you please tape your mouth? Like, what? They do not believe me. But kids, we get kids to do it, and they don't have to have surgeries for the polyps in their noses and their adenoids. It's incredible, that nitric oxide and the increased room in your nasal cavity. Yep. Incredible. So it's huge. I totally agree with you.
It's a big one. So in terms of quality sleep and recovery pillar, so that's a good one. The other one is making sure that you have a good sleep environment. So I make sure to have it nice and dark. I use the REM, I think it's called Sleep Remedy. Yeah, Sleep Remedy masks. And REM, REM, rapid eye movement, which is kind of a play on words. It's cool. Sleep Remedy. So it's really cool because the sleep mask, it's almost like headphone cushions, earphone cushions around your eyes. So you can blink inside, but it's completely dark, and it's padding right around the outside of your eye, the eye socket. So it doesn't put undue pressure onto the eyes, but it's enough to kind of relax your face by putting that pressure there, and you just Velcro to the back. So I use that with sleep tape. With these, like anybody that's ever seen me sleep, they're like, dude, you are on another.
Like what?
So I've got these sleep masks on that look like earphones on my eyes. I've got tape on my mouth, and I've got these little small they're like earbuds, but they just go inside my ears. I don't turn it on. They're just there just to muffle sound, just enough for me to not hear any unusual sounds, but enough to where I could hear something if there was danger, right? And then the last but not least that I make sure and have with me at all times is some form of binaural frequency music or beats. And so I play that, and that's kind of my sleep and recovery hack, if you will.
Very cool.
So there's a lot in there. As far as the consumption, I have loads of supplements. Not that I think supplements fix everything, but with our modern diets and the soil depletion that happens throughout the world, I feel that we really must. First, we need to track and understand what's going on in our biology, but it's almost impossible to get all that you need in your macronutrients, micronutrients, your minerals and vitamins with the modern diet. I just don't think we have enough variety in our diets to get all that we need. So I personally travel with loads of different types of supplements. And that's a whole episode on its own, but
let's have you back on to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. So supplements, consumption. Oh yeah, we talked about energy consumption. So because we can't do much with the non-native EMFs that's happening all around us, I usually travel with and have on my person at all times some form of EMF mitigation device. Not something that blocks EMF, because that would also potentially block the beneficial EMFs that come from the Earth's core and things of that nature, right? So I don't want to walk around in a Faraday cage, but I do want to allow my cells to do better, to become more resilient to non-native EMFs. And so I use a product called Blue Shield, and it's this little device that is like every 30 seconds, it gives a little, scrambles a frequency, and it looks like a little, like, I don't know, like a business card, like a thick business card. And at moments you'll see it kind of blinking. And what that's doing is mitigating any kind of, or scrambling the different frequencies around me so that my body, you see it going off there? Yeah. So that's in my pocket as we speak. And, with all the stuff that's around me, I want to make sure that my cells are resilient. And then other people say, well, what if I don't have that? Or what if I can't get that? There's other ways to mitigate the damage of non-native EMFs. But this, for me, just makes it a little bit easier so I don't have to think about it. Because I try not to use up my willpower and my mental energy on things like that, things that we cannot control anyway. Right. Let's just have that happening. And now I have more capacity to understand what else is going on around me, to become more aware.
Absolutely. Right? I'm so glad you said that, because it needs to be told, and people need to be aware that we have options to help, but also we can't stress too much about it. But there's also, it's going on and it's getting increased. So we need to know about it too.
Right.
Yeah.
And then next would have been quality activeness. So in the activeness component, something that I always have with me all the time is some form of grounding. And I'm always in some form of barefoot shoes and toe socks.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
Yeah, like for me, you can almost always catch me in some sort of flip flop or completely barefoot, or something that allows me to make sure that the proprioceptive nerves, the sensors in the bottom of our feet, are always being activated, because those are the ones that dictate our movement. Those are the ones that dictate that millisecond of movement that gets us out of harm. For instance, I always bring up the question of, can you think of yourself or anyone you know that's ever rolled their ankle, sprained their ankle while being barefoot? Chances are no.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's really profound if you really deeply think about that. That fraction of a second that it takes for the synaptic firing to go from the proprioceptive fibers in the bottom of your feet to the brain and then back through the body to make a movement is so fast.
Yeah.
But every layer of cushion, whether it be socks or even, something like a shoe sole or whatever, anything like that just slows down that signal just a little bit, just enough for us to fully roll the ankle or tear an ACL or damage a hip. And this is why I do that. I know they're not the most beautiful things to have toe socks, but when I take off my shoes and you see I have toe socks on, it's going to cause you to do what? Why do you wear those? Opportunity to educate.
Another one. Yeah.
Right?
Love
it. Yeah, if nothing else, I like to have a lot of weird stuff so people ask me questions. But
me too. I love shocking the pants off people. It's like, oh my gosh, what do you got now? Yeah. Ask me questions. Let's go.
Yeah. So then in exercise, quality exercise tools that I always travel with right now, I would definitely say I travel with my Katsu device, the BFR. And so I have those for the arms and legs. I always travel with some type of electrical muscle stimulation device, whether that's like a Mark Pro, a Compex, Power Dot, any of those. And I'm loving the inertia wave, which is kind of like kind of like a battle rope, but it's like resistance bands in the form of battle rope, if that makes sense.
Very cool.
Those are really cool. And then if I have enough space, I'll also include the X3 bar, which is what I will use to do sort of like the heavy lifting stuff with resistance bands. So
very cool.
That's me in a nutshell.
Wow, you did so well. That was that's amazing. Now, before we run out of time, I just want to cover a few more things. So, number one would be what's the most challenging part of what you do?
The most challenging component of what I do?
Yeah. So as in training, even training high profile clients or clients, you know, or just any part of what you're entailing of what you're doing in terms of even education.
Okay. I think one of the most challenging things is trying to teach patience amongst my patients, right? Trying to teach patience to those people who maybe have been in pain for so long that they just can't be patient. They feel like they can't be patient. And you know, not allowing 21 days for the effects of gluten to set in, or not allowing, you know, 6 days for test results to come in, you know, with taking out meat or bad meat, right? Or you know, different things, right? Like, I feel like we're in this world of instant gratification, and so that's one of my big challenges, especially amongst the high profile clientele that I work with.
Yeah.
Because they're used to getting everything they want right now.
Yeah.
Instantly, right? So that's a big hiccup for me. Another one I would say is, well, I find it to be challenging when people feel like they know it all and they are unwilling to bend the results. They're unwilling to sort of to do some form of trial and error in things that they, so I don't know, I guess the best example I could give is if I see that a person is just really, really pushing it too much with alcohol, I may say, okay, let's go away with alcohol for the next 7 days. And I want you to try to go to bed earlier. They immediately are like, well, no, I can't go to bed early because this is when I get the most of my work. Or you know, I have clients that they have to see me. Like, I have to go out with clients because it's part of my work. And I can't, my hands are tied. I can help you make that situation better. I could try to go down the path of saying, well, instead of having a drink, because that's very problematic for your cells, it's literally poison to our body. And maybe there's a small hormetic effect against that bit of alcohol, but like, why go there when we could maybe just have sparkling water? It looks like a you know, an alcoholic beverage. And now you're going to be more clear-minded and you're going to probably do even better with that meeting, right? Like, why does your having to drink cause you to be better with the person across from you? Like, to me, I just don't understand that. So that's a hard one to deal with. And I find that a lot of high performing and high functioning, high profile clientele, they feel like they have to push the limits all the time on everything. And I just wish they would use that same energy and focus on sleeping.
True.
But you know, that's a big hang up for me.
Yeah. Very, very well answered. And that sort of leads me into my next question was, you know, it fascinates me that you do see some of these high profile clients. And so I guess that you've already answered that question is what is it like training these high profile people? And you know, if you can mention names, if you can't, that's all good. And then sort of what have they taught you the most as well? So, you know, what it's like, is it different to, you know, other, I hate to say regular, you know, clients.
Right.
Obviously your attention is different to both of those, I would say. So, you know, what does that look like?
Yeah. When it comes to working with high profile clients, you know, I think like in my website, and if you do a Google search on me, like there's the names of people like Madonna and Roger Waters of Pink Floyd and Oscar Isaac and Gigi Hadid and so many others. The only thing that sort of separates them from people like myself, right? Like the regular everyday people who do normal things for a living, is that they have maybe more resources, more access to a lot. Doesn't necessarily make it better. It can make them even more misinformed. It can make them even more like freaked out about like, oh, I have all this at my disposal, but I'm still X, right? I'm still injured, or I'm still unable to sleep, or I'm still blah. So for me, like that's probably the downside to it. But the upside is because I'm a person that loves a challenge, and because I'm so curious, I like to find ways to make some sort of influence. And, you know, I've learned so much with working with people like Madonna. Like Madonna is one of those clients that has literally instilled this idea of, I know she's going to ask me why. So I need to know why it is I'm saying whatever it is I'm saying to her, or whatever it is I'm doing to her. She's going to ask why. And even if she doesn't, I know that I need to be prepared in case she does.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the huge lessons I learned from working with her. Roger Waters, on the other hand, is someone that is, I think he's about to be 77 years old. Wow. And he is one of the most active and go-getting, hard-charging people when it comes to structure. So if I say to him, hey, I want you to do, eat like this. I want you to do this is the kind of workouts we're going to do. And I want you to do these movements when I don't see you. This guy will do it until I tell him not to. I could go months later and ask him, check in. Hey man, how's it going? How's everything going? Oh, I'm still doing the 100 squats every other day. I'll be like, oh, wait. Actually, we're supposed to scrap from that, And he's like, well, you didn't tell me, so I've been doing it still. That I love. He's almost like the perfect student. But again, because of his lifestyle, there's also some of the harder things to get him to change, right? But it's like learning to kind of work with someone like a Madonna, to then someone like a Roger Waters, to then maybe even like a younger client, someone closer to my age, like an Oscar Isaac. He and I are so much buddy. We're like brothers. It's like one of my best friends. So it has its own set of challenges as well. Sometimes it's like, dude, should we just skip the workout and go watch a movie? Or should we just, let's go play ping pong or something like that. Right. And so I have to also deal with that. Each of the clients have their own little challenges, but I kind of treat it as fun. I love what it is that I do. And I think the mantra I live by is our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. So truly living by that is something that I try to instill to everyone I work with. And even for myself, it's a mantra I created, but it's also something I love to give. And the big thing in the middle of all that is if, the key word if. It almost needs to be capitalized. If you want to change your body and mind, that's where the awareness comes in. So you might be happy with what you're doing and how you look and how you feel. If you're happy with it, cool. Let's have fun. If you want to change, then let's go.
That's the key, isn't it? You have to need it and you have to want it. Yeah. Wow, Josh, this has been incredible. Now, I think you've already answered my last question, or my second last question, should I say? But I still want to ask it. So, what gets you out of bed in the morning, and what sort of excites you? Everyone has their things that they really love to do. What gets you up in the morning?
I honestly wake up every morning without an alarm, so no alarm. I love waking up. First of all, I know that I'm going to wake up before anything I need to do simply because I'm going to go to bed at an hour that allows me to do so. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have an alarm as a backup, but I almost never need to use it. But waking up knowing that I have something to contribute to loads of people who depend on me, whether it be my colleagues, the trainers that work for me, whether it be my family, my loved ones, my friends. I know I have something to contribute. And so it's almost like I need to wake up so I can be prepared. I can prepare myself to be that giver, to be that sharer. And it's truly, this was a transformative message for me to receive once I kind of learned that this is my passion and my purpose. And I truly feel sorry for people who don't know what their purpose and passion is. But I say, once you find it, don't lose it. Hold on to it and dive as deep as you can. Become vulnerable and just give it your all, regardless of what people think of you or say of you. Have integrity, do it to the fullest, and, you know, and leave a mark on this world. Leave your legacy. So that's why I do what I do. And I truly love getting feedback. And even if I don't get feedback, to just wake up knowing that I have something to give and that there's some audience willing to receive it. That's what gets me up.
Wow. Josh, you're incredible. It's been such an enlightening experience just talking to you. I'm so honored to be able to have this connection and to actually have this time with you. This podcast, I want to shout to the top of the roof because we've got so much gold in here that would be, you know, everyone should be hearing and sharing. So thank you. I from the bottom of my heart, I really, really thank you for your time today.
Likewise.
Now, where can we find you? Tell everyone where to find you, find information about you and follow you and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate enough to have the same sort of tag or username for all of the social media outlets. Cool. So it's at Joshua J. Holland. So that's Joshua, Joshua, J. Holland, Holland. So all one word, Joshua J. Holland, and that's my website. That's Instagram, Facebook. It's all there. And I also have a podcast as well.
Yes,
and,
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, maybe we can get you on mine at some point.
Ooh.
Yeah, because I'm really having a good time. Like, as you mentioned, the things that you mentioned, I'm like, I can't wait to talk to you about the things you do. My podcast is called Simply Walk the Talk, and that can be found on pretty much any podcast platform. And that podcast caters to all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. So some of the things we talked about have been laid out in great detail in several of the episodes. And I've been doing that for about 3 years now. And I've just had a blast. As I showed you right before we started recording today, I just got a new setup and I'm so geeked out because I spend money on the things that I'm sharing. Right. And so, you know, this is where my money goes. It goes to like upgrading my kit.
Me too. It goes on looking after my body, my family, and to help other people. Yeah, that's the passion. That's where it drives into. I love the name of your podcast, Simply Walk the Talk. It grabbed me straight away. I was like, yes, this is so true. I love it.
Thank you.
So I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you, Josh. Look forward to speaking to you in the future sometime. If I make it to the US as well, we might be able to meet up in person sometime in the future. Yes. So thank you so much.
Yes, I would love that. And thank you all for listening.
Pleasure. See ya.